Hi guys, it's Professor Fernandez again, and I wanted to go through another part of the library website that will help you understand and evaluate your sources, whether it's a good source or not a great source. So hopefully you've already seen the Kapow and finding out if your information is really good video that you hopefully saw before this. If you haven't, stop. Go back and watch it because these two videos work in tandem with each other. So there's a couple ways to evaluate whether the information that you're seeing on the website is accurate. So whether you're in my 1301 or my 1302, whether it's history, whether it's sociology, whether it's speech, you have to look at information and evaluate whether information is good or not. One way to do it, of course, is by using Kapow. And if you're in my 1301, that handout should be in the module. If you're in 1302, that handout should be in your reference section of your D2L site. Kapow is a great way to do it. Another great way to do it that you can use, in addition to Kapow, is this wonderful resource, which is a checklist on the library's website. So let's go to the library's website on the Lone Star College website, and let's get to working on it. All right, so you're gonna go to libraries here, click on libraries, and once you're on libraries, some things should look familiar. If you saw the research database video, this is where you go get your research on with the databases here. You want to scroll down to here where it says research. And there's lots of great information here about academic integrity and plagiarism. That's super important. Again, please read that, because what I would hate to happen is you guys do so much work on your papers and you plagiarize. And there is such a thing as accidental plagiarism, and it happens with copy and paste situations all the time. You copied and pasted and you forgot to cite it, and so it dings on my end and I have to give you 0 because you plagiarized. So please read the plagiarism sections here, please, please, please. Okay, so let's go to evaluating information, which is what we want to do. We want to evaluate whether an article that you are reading online for your research paper or maybe for a discussion post is indeed valuable information. So, what's wonderful about this is that it's literally, you click yes or no on things. But there's a couple of pitfalls here that I want to talk to you about, right? So, let's read the directions. Click the response that best characterizes a specific information source: web page, periodical, article, government document, or book. And this automatically scoring checklist will help you rate whether the source provides useful support for class-related research. So, what you want to do is go through each question, and each section has a couple of questions. I think the largest one is the content section. So there's reliability, whether this is reliable, how good this content is, currency. If you have not seen the first video and know what currency means, go back to the first video. I'm not going to explain it here. And appropriateness. All right, so let's go to the first one. Say you're looking at an information online, an article online, and you want to see if it is good to use. So, number 1 says information about the author and or sponsor of this material in the source itself. So, what it's saying is there an author? Is there a name that says somewhere that someone wrote it? Or is the sponsor of the material in the source itself? Meaning, there's no name, but there is actually a name of a sponsor who wrote it. The Washington Post, the New York Times. Sometimes they have something called editorials, which is written by the editorial department, which is separate from the news department. They're not reporters, and they write a staff editorial. Usually those editorials don't have names on it, because it is a collaborative effort of the editorial staff. So there is no name on it. However, it is a valid source because it comes from the source of which is representing. Wall Street Journal, Fox News, CNN, New York Times, right? Information verifies that they are knowledgeable about the topic or that they consulted experts. For most information, and I can speak with like news articles, things that you would find on a newspaper or news information site, they will do this by quoting sources. So they'll say, it'll be a quote that says, Dr. John Smith says bananas are the most healthiest fruit in all of the world. And then you'll have a direct quote with Dr. Smith saying, yes, that is correct. Bananas are super healthy and look quite yummy on oatmeal. End quote, Dr. Smith said. So that is them verifying knowledge about the topic and consulting experts, right? Information sources cited in the text and or in a list. This is very, very tricky here. Let me tell you why. Because if you're looking at, say, an academic or scholarly journal or source, that's very easy to find. At the end of the academic or scholarly article, you will find a list of sources of which they received information from, their research list essentially. However, if you are going to do, say, an article from the Houston Chronicle or an article from, say, BuzzFeed still does news, they're not going to have sources listed in the same way. They list their sources in the article. So back to the example of Dr. John Smith and the bananas. Dr. John Smith being quoted in the article saying that bananas are excellent and the best fruit ever. That is how that information is listed. And that's how they're citing their source. So news articles are not going to use MLA format or APA format to list or cite their sources. They're going to cite them in the article. So that would be a yes. Now let's move on to content. Does the title or other information suggest that this material primarily presents facts, research study, charts, graphs, and or statistics? Now, it's, again, super easy for scholarly articles because that's kind of what they have to have. But if you're using a news article, and this is really important to know, especially if you're in 1301 and you're doing research on, say, your proposal essay, if you have me for the summer, or if you're doing a case like the Adnan Syed case, most of your sources are going to come from news media outlets. So when you're going through and evaluating whether it is a good source or not, you need to keep it in mind that these great sources or these news media outlets will have this information, but in a different way. So this is another example of how they will have it in a different way. They may have a chart or a graphic. Sometimes that happens, but they may not. However, they will have statistics or research studies, and for them research studies are where they tell you what happened in the past. That is how they handle it. Let me explain to you what I mean about that. So if you are researching Adnan Syed and you're wondering about research study, there's going to be a paragraph or a series of paragraphs where they kind of fill you in on what happened in the past. They'll say, Adnan Syed was convicted in 2000 of killing his former girlfriend, Heyman Lee. And then they'll tell you all about Serial, and then they'll tell you what happened with trials and lawyers and everything, right? There'll be a series of paragraphs where they kind of give you some background info. That's research study for a news article. There you go. All right. Number 2, does the title or other information suggest that this material includes opinion with valid or reputable source materials? For example, teachers citing research studies that suggest year-round schooling is detrimental to children. So the titles are really interesting. Here is what is interesting. The reporters, the writers of the actual article do not write the title. That's so strange, but it's true. Other people who read after the reporter or the writer writes the article, they create the title, and sometimes the titles don't match the articles, and it's misleading and it's frustrating for readers. I understand. Trust me on that. I know that very, very well. So, but you still got to look at the title. Is the title kind of clickbaitish? Um, if it is, then you click yes. If it's not, then you click no. Just because the title is clickbaitish doesn't mean you need to get rid of the entire article. It's not good. It's not a valid article. It just means you probably need to be careful with it. That's what it means. Because sometimes you'll get an article that has um, a clickbaity type of title, but the article's fine. And again, the writer doesn't write the title. Someone else writes the title, and someone else who may not be living in that city is writing the title. So for that kind of information, you really need to read it. But because we are evaluating the entire source, go ahead and do what you will. What you must, my friend. So number 3, does the author and or sponsor include different viewpoints or opinions about an issue? This is going to be hard for students. And I see this with students, differentiating between an article with facts and an article with opinion. Oh, I'm sorry, an opinion piece. There is a difference. An opinion piece will literally give someone's thoughts, their actual opinion on something. They may or may not back it up with facts. For example, we talked earlier about a staff editorial from a newspaper that doesn't have a name on it. It's not going to have a name because it's written by many people, but it's still valid because it's under the name of the organization or the newspaper or news site, correct? So we're looking at that, and there should be an opinion. I feel, I think, I believe, we believe this should have happened. Da 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 da. Those type of terms and those types of phrases tell you automatically that it's an opinion. Phrases like, this person said, this person discussed, the group met, then this happened, this other person felt this way, right? Not I, but this person, John Smith, felt that bananas get a bad rap, right? That is not opinion, that is fact. So that's the difference between them both. However, you can have opinion pieces with lots of facts in it. The best opinion pieces have facts that back up their opinion. That doesn't mean that you throw away the baby with the bathwater, that if it's an opinion piece, it's not a good piece. That is not what you want to do. You really want to look at the entire source again and evaluate it. Are they just telling their opinion without citing any facts? Are they saying that bananas are the best fruit ever, and they're not quoting Dr. John Smith, and they're not quoting the Food and Drug Administration of America, who indeed is proving that there's lots of potassium in bananas, right? If they're not doing that, then that's probably not a good source. There's not good facts in there. But if there's an opinion with facts in there, then yeah, then you have an author and a sponsor that includes different viewpoints and opinions about an issue. So that would be a yes. Number 4, does the information meet your expectations? Contents match the title. You got to do what you got to do. Again, titles are not always written by the reporter or the writer. Sometimes, and most times, they're written by someone who lives in a completely different state. So you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes people fall on the job. It's what happens. Currency. The date listed in the information that relates to the timeliness of material being presented. Well, yeah. You don't want perhaps an Adnan Syed article from 1999 that just said they found Hae-Min Lee's body. Okay, so would you need that information? You don't, because you already know that they found Hae-Min Lee's body in 1999. Or actually, 2000. They found Hae-Min Lee's body in 2000, right? They found it in January, February of that year already. So why would you need an article that says they found it, right? So think about the timeliness of it based on what you need. Let me fast forward here. Does this information seem to support my thesis? Now, this is an interesting question. You got to know your thesis in order to answer this. If you don't know your thesis quite yet, I would go ahead and put yes, just so you know, like, I need to look at this again, because you may be doing research and like you may have a thought about it, but you're not solid about the thesis, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Can I understand this information without having special training or education? Oh, hopefully you say yes. If you say no, please come see me and we can decipher it together. And number 3, the last one on appropriateness. Does this information include sufficient topic detail to be useful? Again, that's the same thing we talked about earlier about an article from 1999 or 2000 for the Hae-Min Lee or for the Adnan Syed case that you may not need. You may have better luck with an article from 2015 or 2018, something a little bit more recent that has a little bit more information, right? So let's just say you click yes on all of these. So let's go ahead and click yes on some of these, maybe no on a couple, just at random. Let's just say yes, okay? Yes, no, and see what we get here. So you do all this wonderful stuff and you say, and you have, okay, total appropriate points is 16. This one, currency points, is 1, and it's so on and so forth, right? It gives you a total of 17. And it tells you right here, based on your total score above, you have a potentially quite valuable information here. So you have a source here that's pretty valuable. So it gives you that information there. Now, here's the thing. This is great for generally knowing whether you should consider it or not. But again, like I've been explaining, there's some pitfalls here with this. You have to consider what you have. A scholarly source versus a popular source, like something from a news paper or a magazine or a news site. Do you have an article or do you have an opinion piece? Those are really important to know and to understand the distinction, because not everything is going to be cited the same way. Not everything's going to be listed the same way. So, for example, again, a scholarly source will have a bunch of sources listed at the end of the scholarly article, and they'll have it in APA or MLA format, or even Chicago format, heaven forbid, but it'll be there. But a news article will not. But that doesn't mean that the news article didn't cite. The news article did cite and did do their citations. They just did it in a different way. They do it with attribution. Someone said something else. Another person said this. According to this study from 1993, according to this press release. That's how they're citing information. Okay? I know this is a long explanation for a very short thing, but I wanted to make sure that you guys understood that when you're using this, you need to make sure and understand what exactly you're saying yes or no to. All right? Good luck and happy evaluating.